Our next panelist, Ramat Akintola. Ramat is a software engineer and a DPG technical advisor at Mest Africa. She's an active member of Python Ghana and previously served as communications co-lead for PyLadies Ghana. Ramat is also the co-organizer for the Accra chapter of Women in Machine Learning and Data Science. She contributes to open source projects and communities such as Django Not Space, Django Accessibility Working Group, and the program's lead for everything open source community. Let's welcome Rahmat. Our next panelist is from Telecel. We have Mr. Dan Sukwachi, who is the head of enterprise solutions at Telecel. He's a technology and telecom executive with over 26 years of experience. Let's clap for him. That's a long time. He currently serves as the head of enterprise solutions at Telecel, where he leads the design, implementation, and operations of enterprise technologies solutions across industries, including banking, mining, utilities, education, and oil and gas. There's a lot going on here, but I'm going to skip because there's so much to Dr. Danso Kwachi. So in addition to his telecoms background, he has a strong interest and practical experience in data science, machine learning, and predictive analytics. He has designed machine learning models using Python for applications such as churn propensity analysis, operational load forecasting to support data-driven decision-making. He holds a master's in strategic business in IT from the University of Portsmouth and a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from KNUST, alongside multiple artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, and telecom engineering certificates. Let's welcome Mr. Dan Sukwachi. Now, for our last panelist, she is an AI researcher at the Responsible AI Lab, KNUST. She's focused on building inclusive, human-centered technology and combines machine learning and design to create practical systems that improve how people communicate, learn, and interact with everyday technology, especially in underserved and multilingual communities. She blends research, creative problem solving to develop intuitive, responsible AI solutions for real-world impacts. Our panelist is Ama Branua Banfo, and she lives by one core question: how do we build AI systems alongside the communities they serve, ensuring the technology is functional and genuinely everyday lives? Let's give it up for my panel. Hello, okay. So, welcome all of you once again. And for the next 90 minutes, we are going to argue about whether access to data is a real thing that is actually holding Ghana back in the data space, or is this an excuse we are all just given every small thing? There's no data. When we ask Ghana Statistical Service, they don't give us data. Is it real, or are we just saying it for vibes? So I'm going to start for all of you. When we say Ghana has a data problem, what does that mean to you? I'll start with Dr. Paul.
Yep.
Hello. Okay.
Ghana has a data problem, right? Yeah, so it simply means that we don't have access to the data. Or if we have access, it's difficult to access it. and if it is even accessible, it is not well maintained.
Yeah, please can you all hear me? Forgive me for my face mask. So I think I agree with Dr. Paul. I wouldn't say we necessarily have a data problem. I would say there are concerns with accessibility, like how do we access that data, and then what is the quality? What does the quality of that data look like? In what format is that data? So I would say maybe it should be data accessibility and quality, not necessarily like a data problem, like we do not have the data at all. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, I also share the same view. I think that um, right now we are generating a lot of data, and there are lots of things that are possible. However, this data is not in a format sometimes that you could really use. And also, even when you can, you have to go through a lot of red tape to be able to get to it. So that is where the real challenge sits as of now for Ghana.
Yes, so yes, so thank you very much for the question. I do agree with everything my co-panelists have said. What I will add on to is Ghana's data problem, as we say it is more of a massive gap in documentation, as Mr. Kwacha said, that it is not in a format we can use, so we can have it manually being in books and the like, but digitally we don't have that. And once you don't have the documentation of our culture, our habits, our lives, it's very hard to see the trends. And when it's hard to see the trends, it's difficult to make informed decisions that fit our people. So I would say that is what it means by Ghana has a data problem. Thank you very much.
Okay, so right now we've established the fact that the problem is not the unavailability of data, it's access to data. So, Dr. Paul, I'm staying with you. You spent a career trying to answer questions with Ghanaian data. So, as a researcher, how has the access to data or the lack of access to data influenced the kind of research questions that researchers like you in Ghana are able to pursue?
So thank you for the question, but permit me to add something else which maybe we are not looking at. When we are referring to data, most often we are referring to, let's say, rectangular data. Okay, data in tabular form, well arranged, and then you go and get. But there are various forms of data. For example, you are doing a research on crop, you want to find what crop diseases are in your region. You go and take pictures of all the plants that you have. You keep them, it's data. The receipts that your accountant generates is data. You take a picture and keep them. So the data in that form, those ones, we don't go there. But now the problem is everyone is looking for data which is already being prepared. And so, but in Ghana, we are not used to making decisions based on data. We have most institutions, I can say on authority, have not yet integrated the data scientists into the organogram, for example. So the data scientist is an appendix. And because of that, if you go even ask for data, they do not even know why you are asking for the data. And if you are asking for it in a particular form, you are worrying the big man at the top there. So it's extremely difficult to obtain data for any form of policy advice or help to make decisions on policy. So perhaps I would recommend that the data science community must start curating the data. And must not wait for the various offices to generate the data for us.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Paul. So you mentioned that some institutions sit on their data, even though it's readily available. So I'm coming to Mr. Kwach. Telecel has a lot of data, from mobile money data. We also have mobility data, network usage. That's a lot. Where do you draw the line between data that should stay proprietary and data that, when properly anonymized, can be used to serve national policy, like Dr. Paul mentioned, for things like maybe financial inclusion or urban planning? Where do you draw that line? What can be brought out and what should be kept in?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So, like you rightly said, at Telecel we have a lot of data. We have millions of Ghanaians on our network, and they interact with the network. So there are lots of things that they do, people that they call, transactions that they do, financial transactions, and there are records of this that are kept. Now, as a responsible corporate citizen, we have data protection laws that we have to comply with. And so where it comes to things that the law mandates that as an operator we have to keep, that we are unable to share as is. But like you rightly said, there are some instances where the data can be modified for the purpose for which it is being used. It does not need to go out in that raw form where an individual, for instance, can be identified. And where that is possible, we always try to work to make it available. I'll give you an example. So if you take, let's say, calls that people make. Now, it comes along, or the record comes along with the location that the person made the call. So if the person made a call here, and then the next day you find that the person makes a call but in a different location, it shows that the person has moved. Now, we will not be able to give you that detail in the way in which it is. That is, the person's call detail records, the phone number, and where the call was made. However, we can aggregate that data, and when we put it together, anonymize it, it can give an idea of how people move. And that information we shared during the COVID-19 pandemic because it was good to use to be able to see how people are moving from place to place and be able to contain the epidemic. So when it comes to that, we are able to share. But when it comes to non-anonymized, that can be pointed to a specific individual where the corporate data protection laws prohibit, that we are not able to share. So that's where we draw the line.
Okay, so we've established the fact that you collect data from people. So I'm coming to Amma. Amma, in many cases, when data is collected from communities, the communities don't see the direct benefits of the data that is being collected about them, right? So how can we create a data ecosystem that generates value for the people that we are using to generate that data? So it's a sort of a cycle where they benefit from the data we are collecting from them. How do we create an ecosystem that will work and benefits them?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Please, can I be heard? Yes, okay. So thank you very much for the question. So usually the issue is when let me start with the life cycle. Okay, so we identify a problem in a particular community we want to solve, and we realize that we can use AI to help with the solution. So what's our first step? We need data. And let's just assume we have the funding to go and collect the data. Now we can go into such communities to collect the data, but one thing we always fail to do is take note of the environment. So for example, you are trying to solve a specific problem that is only that is only prevalent in rural areas. But at the end of the day, we look at your product, and your product requires Wi-Fi to work. Meaning you went there, you collected the data, but you didn't take note of the environment of the said data. Okay, so what happens is you end up coming with the data, getting a very good project and a very good product, sorry, that is good on paper, but you can't deploy it to the said community because nobody has access to Wi-Fi. Nobody, even the network connection is really bad. And so to create a data ecosystem that is really beneficial to the communities we take them from, we have to bear in mind that whatever data we take from them, they should be the first target for whatever product it is. You can always add on use cases. That's perfectly fine in order to make your system more robust. But wherever you gather the data from, make sure that whatever solution you are trying to build is targeted towards the community or communities first, and then you can expand from there. So I really believe that if we bring in that inclusivity design in the first phase of the life cycle, we wouldn't have to go all the way, have a working product, have quality data, and yet communities are still the way they are. So that's what I would say to that.
Okay, so I'm staying with you.
Okay.
You mentioned that we should collect data from a community and then use it to benefit that community. So let's come to AI. I mean, there are a lot of AI products going around. So what risks emerge when AI systems are trained primarily on data sets that are collected outside of the communities that they are meant to serve?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So with this, let me use a typical example. Okay, say we have to make it very practical. So say we have an AI system or let's say we want to build an AI system to detect skin diseases. Okay, in order to help our medical officers because perhaps they are understaffed in that particular area. So we want the data, but of course, perhaps there's no data like that available, which is locally relevant. But we identified data that was gathered in a different country. And unfortunately, that data was gathered from people with white skin. Okay, but I mean, we still want a solution. So we go ahead, we train it, we test it against other systems, compare it to benchmark, and it's doing so well. So on paper, everything is amazing. We run simulations, and it's doing so well. But we decide to deploy it into our hospitals, and someone comes in, a patient comes in, the medical officer sees something on the skin, has not been diagnosed yet, so we don't know what it is, sees something on the skin of the patient, takes a device to utilize whatever system we used in order to help him or her diagnose, scans it, and the system says, ooh, there's nothing wrong with this person. Maybe it's just a common rash. Give him or her an ointment, and off she goes. But we come around and we realize that perhaps this person has eczema. And what we fail to realize is a skin disease like that, it manifests differently on white and black skin. So on white skin, it will look perhaps bright red, patches or something. But on black skin, it will look different, like dark brown or violet or purple. But since the AI system hasn't seen that before, it's going to tell you that, oh, this is nothing like what I've seen before, so it is not part of my diseases. It is not a skin disease. And so if there's no human in the loop, where the doctor decides to cross-check whatever result the AI system gave it, it means the person's life is at risk, and the person's quality of life is at risk. And this is not just to say the risk only exists in healthcare because of my example, but perhaps if you take agric, it can give a farmer wrong crop cycle rotations. If you take finance, perhaps if a local trader wants to take a loan, because the system was trained on foreign data, it may not understand local informal cash flows. And so it's going to deny the loan, but you can't do anything about it. And so what we tend to realize is the main risk is the systems end up working on paper, excellent. And so we trust them, but when we need them the most, then they fail us because they've never seen our environments before. So I would say, in a sum, the main risk is the system works so well, but when we need it the most, it starts to fail us, and it affects our way of life. So that's how I would.
Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Paul, based on what she has said, to sum it up, we use external data sets that won't work for us. And I want to know, what impact does it have on the relevance of current research that we are working on? Because if we are not collecting data locally and we are using international data, what is the relevance of the research that we are even working on in the first place?
Thank you. So it's simply that we have learned to train a machine. That's all that we have achieved. But it does not benefit the locals. So this is the main problem now, especially for AI systems based for medical research, and including bioinformatics. But the good news is that now there's a lot of collaboration between research systems all over Africa. So we have a huge database, especially for medical data. During COVID, our hospitals in Ghana who were testing for COVID had also sent the genome to a big database in the USA where every researcher has access to this data, huge data. And so, because they have realized that if we do not encourage the local communities to bring data to the system, we will not have an accurate system. So for the first time, immediately during COVID, the great advantage for medicine is that now they have genome data from every continent. Before COVID, it was just European data or American data. And even in America, the same problem. They get data from whites, and the black Americans do not. So if you are going to a doctor in the US, and it's encouraged that you are a black person, you should go to a black doctor, because she or he would try to tailor whatever she has seen in the results to your situation. Thank you.
I'm staying with you. You mentioned that in the US, they had enough data for COVID research, right? And several governments and countries have seen. Do you think that is the same direction Ghana should move in the first place? Or do you think we should sort of stabilize first of all, there's no research grants, enough infrastructure. Do you think we should focus on setting up something like that where we have easy access to public data in terms of healthcare, agric, and all of that? Or should we focus our energy and time elsewhere?
So thank you for the question. Very important area for AI research, that data storage systems should be built. And now I'll jump immediately to what universities should do. Universities should collaborate. And universities, just as they have internal or external auditors, they should have a database manager and a server, big server in the institution where they collect lots of data and store and share for research. If every university in Ghana can do it, they can take a little bit of the IGF. Unfortunately, we have seen the pattern that research and development or research and innovation budgets in Ghana is very low until this year when the research fund was established. So we hope that it's going to change a little. But if we want to have AI systems performing optimal, then we need our own database systems in every university in Ghana. That is the beginning. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Paul. So, Ramat, I'm coming to you now. In all of this, we have open source resources. When I'm talking about digital public goods, it emphasizes on openness, accessibility, and public value. On all the things that Ghana is still trying to catch up on, how do you think we can leverage digital public goods to improve our access in the public sector to data?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. So, I would start with some of the principles of, or one of the things that digital public good is trying to solve is reusability and interoperability. So, a major thing we've noticed is that systems do not speak to each other, even though there's data in, first, let's use the medical data, for example. A particular EHR system in a particular hospital might be using one system that's different from another. They have the data, but they do not speak to each other. We have multiple data. So this is one area digital public good is trying to solve, right? And how do Ghana use this interoperability to make sure that we're able to have enough data or able to access this data? So I think I would start by definitely making the data set available. So a good example of this would probably be in a case of where you're building a solution. So there's always this, I'll go back to what Dr. Ama said about idea validation. If I want to build a solution, I should not have to start worrying about you getting my data from scratch or having to go to a community to gather data. If this data set is available, if it's open, because as I said, one of the key principles of DPG is openness, interoperability. I should be able to build a system where I do not have to collect a data that's already there, but then just focus on focus on the problem I want to solve. So when we start building solutions or when we start building AI systems or whatever products we're working on, even from idea validation stage, you don't, so I'm going to use product managers, for example. When product managers get ideas or problems, when they want to validate this idea, the whole phase they go through is an example of collecting data as well. And instead of having to get all of this from scratch, no, or building solution, or these days, most people just build solution. We have the AI systems for no code or no code tools. You just build your MVP, you build your prototype. You do not even validate your idea at all. You're collecting the same information everyone or some other system has collected. So why not leverage the data sets that's there? It is not accessible, sure, but at least there are ways that you can get some of this data. An example of this would be recently we're trying to build something in education, and we needed data set on SHS, like SHS to say the data is available, sure, perhaps not in the format we wanted it, but then in the course of building this product, we realized that we didn't need to do the whole problem of having to go to schools, get their curriculums, get their textbooks and all of those things, because it is already there. Perhaps accessibility was an issue, the format was an issue, but then in our validation, we noticed that we didn't have to do that. So we focused on what really mattered, which was we wanted to build like an AI system for the curriculum, but then we were able to get the data in a particular, so we didn't have to do that. So if someone else wants to use our system, they probably wouldn't have to do the same thing where they have to gather data, build an AI system, where they could probably just leverage our APIs or something to use in their own particular system. So in that case, products or systems are able to speak together or speak to each other. Interoperability comes in, and this is what DPG is trying to solve as well. So you build solution for your local context, you make sure that it's interoperable and reusable across all different contexts. Thank you.
Okay, staying on interoperability, Mr. Danso. So I'm going to give a use case. Let's take digital lending, right? A couple of years ago, my credit score was formed where for banks and other financial institutions, if you wanted to give out money to Ghanaians, you could check their credit score and then decide whether or not to give them the loan. But there's an issue where the financial institution, when I say financial institution, I'm referring to Telecel Cash, MTN Mobile Money, the banks, microloan services, all of that. where even if you want to check someone's eligibility for a loan, you'll find nothing. But then the person has most definitely taken Telecel cash loan or MTN money loan and all of that. So this brings me to my question. How can stronger collaboration, right, between government, academia, industry improve data availability while maintaining safeguard rails?
Yeah, I think that the example you mentioned brings out the problem very well. You see, looking at the ecosystem, you can see at least 3 different interest groups. That is the private sector or commercial interests. And then you can also see research and academia as one leg. And then you can see policymakers also as another leg. Now, you realize that each of these 3 have different needs that must be met. So to solve that problem, that's where usually the challenge comes in, because what one requires is not what the other also wants. So to solve this, we would need a governance model that solves the problem for each of these interest groups. By that, what I mean is that if we have a framework that governs how data is shared, such that the interests of the commercial entities in terms of their compliance with data protection laws is taken into account, but at the same time, it doesn't give restricted access to those in academia who have the skill set to be able to turn the data into value or actionable insights. And at the same time, the public sector, the policymakers, who also have a considerable amount of data. If we have that framework where everyone is able to share what they have without the challenges that we have currently, with the legal backing and all, that will help drive or foster much better collaboration between these entities, and we are going to see that ecosystem grow much more.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification as well. So, Dr. Paul, researchers often call for greater access to data. How do we balance the need for data with ethical considerations and public trust? Because sometimes I'm scared to share my data. What are you going to use it for?
So thank you for the question. Thank God now we have the Data Protection Commission in Ghana that has set clear rules how data is to be stored, how data is to be assessed, the conditions under which data is to be kept, and all of that. So if this framework by the state is allowed to operate without using the Ghanaian ways and means to obstruct it, then it will be easier to access data. In fact, the right to information law or regulation is precisely to allow for such data accessibility. But again, the people who manage the data, I'm sorry to say it, but if it's a white man in an office somewhere in charge of this data, you can be the president of the country. When you come, the regulations are this, you would apply. But in Ghana, we are very likely to be local judges in local situations, and then we bend the rules. That's how come data can easily be misapplied. And that's why people will continue to have mistrust in their data which is being kept. And having said that, let me add quickly that today the Ghanaian is very much alert to her data that is taken. So just a few years ago, I came with a few friends from outside who were traveling along Cape Coast, wanted to take a picture of plantain because they were excited. The people insisted that we have to pay before we take the picture of the plantain, which tells you that the Ghanaian today is alert if you are going to take their data. So it is over to us to allow the Data Protection Council, Commission, laws and regulations to work so that when we go to the communities, of course, we have to explain to the communities what we are looking for the data for. Development which does not take consideration of the local community will fail. I'm sure there is a popular story. They built a KV, a WC for a community, and then they have it opened. And the people said, we don't use rooms for our toilet. We don't use rooms because KV, the WC is in a room. So rooms, we sleep there. We don't use it. So the community must be properly informed that we need this your data, this is what we use it for, this is how it is protected. We must allow the Data Commission, Data Protection Commission's rules to apply, and then data will be available to us all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Paul. So you mentioned the Ghana Data Protection Commission. Recently, we also had the Ghana National AI Strategy being launched, and we had an AI as well. I can't remember her name, but we saw her demoed. So looking at all this, you realize that Ghana is taking charge of their digital transformation journey, right? So, Mr. Danso, do you think that our current data infrastructure is evolving at the same pace as our digital transformation? Because to me, it sort of looks like it's more theoretical. We are launching books and policies and strategies, but is there infrastructure there? Does it actually work? And do you think that this is a bottleneck in our development when it comes to data science, the data space?
So when it comes to the infrastructure, let me talk about Telecel. We understand this very well, that having data and data-driven decisions goes along with infrastructure that would, first of all, be able to harness and collect the data and also be able to store it. So that is why you would hear that we are expanding our network. In fact, this year in 2026, we are expanding from like 5,000 plus cells to about 9,000, which is something that we haven't done for a long time, as in like this volume in such a short space of time. And also all of this brings in lots more data. And so we are looking at expanding our various storage systems as well as charging systems and all of that. So in terms of the infrastructure itself, I would say that at Telecel, for example, we are growing it. The real challenge has to do with its accessibility. That is the data that is collected. Because without that framework that I spoke about, then being able to give it to a researcher becomes on a sort of an ad hoc basis. Then it has to be what kind of data is being requested for, why is this data being requested for, and then sometimes when those are not managed well, then it might not be accessible. But there are many ways that can go around this, and we always strive to make sure that wherever there are these challenges, we work together with whoever is requesting it so that we can come to a situation where the objective at least could be achieved. So it is the accessibility. As for the information, it is there.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kwache. So moving on to Amma. Our theme for this year is Data First, Unlocking Ethical and Inclusive AI in Ghana. As a researcher, and you're also building technology for underserved and multilingual communities, how do you ensure that what you are working on, or the research you are doing, or the products you are building is actually inclusive? And also considering the fact that sometimes it's quite difficult to get data from those communities, how do you ensure that what you are working on is including everybody and nobody is being left behind?
Okay, so thank you very much for the question. This question actually brings back a lot of memories because I'm with the Responsible Artificial Intelligence Lab, as Beda mentioned, and basically, it boils down to teamwork and funding, because you can have the best ideas. I always say that when you find yourself in Africa, you are in the best position to make the most difference. Why? Because there's still a lot to do. Okay. So there are a lot of problems we need to find solutions to. But there's the case where there's no data, or even if there's data, as my fellow panelists have already said, it's not in a format that either you can use or easily accessible. Okay. So usually when we have a project, so for the projects I work on, for example, um, we have the full backing of our PI and scientific director, who is in the person of Professor Jerry John Ponyo, and he's a very result-oriented person, okay? So if we have to work on something, we have to work on a project, and the data is simply not available. For example, as Obeda mentioned, I work in the multilingual space, and it's not until the Waxal data sets released by Google and the work Ghana NLP is doing, it's not until then that we had speech data. Okay, and even then there are still some gaps in there. And so for us in the lab, and for me personally, even as I'm driven by making sure that technology works for the people it is made for, I make sure, or we make sure, that if the data is not available, we go around gathering it. And this taught me a very big lesson, that one, data collection is easily the most expensive part of research, and we don't talk about it enough. And so that's why when we say that universities should come on board, organizations should come on board, we are not just saying it just because, for example, they have the data, but because it is really expensive, okay? And so when you have the funding, even with them, you need a dedicated team, because I mean, let me take a quick detour. Perhaps some of you may be thinking, why funding? Okay, so think about this. The data you are going to collect it from people. The data is not lying somewhere you are just going to pick. You have to communicate to people to get that data, especially for data that doesn't exist yet, in the sense of documented yet, okay? So you have to go to people, and you will take part of their day, you take part of their weeks, you take part of their months. You have to compensate them for it. They can't just give you their patterns, their habits, and everything just like that, and you just go. They won't mind you. And so that's why data collection is very expensive. Not to talk about the annotation and the labeling parts. That part hasn't even come in. Okay. So in order to make our project very, very inclusive, we make sure that the data we use is locally relevant. And that has been an expensive venture. Now we are seeing a lot more data sets come into the space. And so it's a bit more easy to be more innovative, especially in the speech technology space with the Waxal data set and whatnot. But there are still a lot more sectors where we don't have access to the data sets. Even if they exist, we don't even know they exist. And even if we want to collect them, we don't have access to them. So at the core of it, we need to make sure that our data, for whatever system it is locally relevant. And one last thing I'll add is the use cases, okay? You have to consider use cases when you are building anything, when you are developing any AI model. And that is what would make sure that at least you've covered majority of the communities. Even if not everybody, you've covered majority of the communities. So you have use cases where perhaps I have a speech technology system I want to build. I have to consider, okay, so what if the person is visually impaired? Okay, so what if the person is deaf? Okay, so what if, like, there are so many, okay, so what if the person doesn't have access to network? You know, there are so many use cases that you have to take into consideration in order to make it very, very inclusive. Because you can have locally relevant data, but without the use cases, as I've said, you will get a very good product, give it to them, and no one can use it because it doesn't exist in their environment, or they can't use it. It doesn't coexist with them. So that's what I'll say about that.
Okay, thank you, Amma, for that insightful discussion. Ramat, in your view, what makes data truly accessible? Is it just by the mere fact that the data is there, or are we also considering the fact that, or other factors that will determine whether people should and can use the data?
Yeah, thank you very much. So
I think I would answer this with a few points. So, when we say accessibility, it's beyond just availability now. So, the data is available, or let's just say, yeah, on this panel, we've tried to establish that the data is there, but it's not accessible. So, then what then comes in? Why is it not accessible? The first thing will be, do people really know that that data is there? If it's so using the education example I made, when we wanted to build a solution, first of all, I was the one leading the project, and then I didn't know that that data was even there in the first place. It is literally there. It is like an old PDF format and all of those things, but I didn't know it was there. I didn't know you could maybe, if you needed some data from the ministry, there's a way to reach out to them that, oh, I need this particular data. I was recently checking EPA's website one day, and then I noticed that they have like this section where you can request for environmental data from them. But people do not know that. I didn't know that. Not until I wanted to build something in that space, and then I was asking around. So beyond just availability, do people know that that data is even there in the first place? If they do know that it is there a format or is there a way for them to request for that data? So using the EPA thing, again as an example, yes, they've put it there, or you can request environmental data and all of those things. Then I clicked on the contact form. It wasn't working. That means I literally have to go all the way to their office in my district just to get information. And we all know how that is going to go. So even though I found it, it is there. Now I want to request for it, nothing. Even if I want to pay for it, there's no way for me to request for that data. So these are things that we need to factor in availability, right? So the next thing will probably be the format of the data. I probably need like maybe a CSV data or a sheet or something. But then when this data come, most times I see a lot of information are being saved as PDF files. That is one thing I've had challenge with the project I'm working on. I had to download like a lot of PDF files. In fact, everything was in PDF. Yes, you can use PDFs now. You can maybe train models on PDFs or whatever, depending on how you use it. But then it's still very expensive. I mean, I have to go through a lot of things. Cleaning won't be easy for me because how do I start like changing that whole thing from PDF? It has images that I probably won't need. It has like some diagrams or whatever that I will need in my model. So that means I have to think of how to remove all of these things because the data is not in the format I want it. And definitely if you request for it in a particular format, the concerns will come that, oh, will you be the one to pay them for changing that format or providing it in a particular format and all of those things. So, yeah, and then the last thing is timeliness. So if the data is there, if it's available, let's say you know how to request for it, is it being updated daily? Let's say, for example, maybe Amma is building like something, is doing a research on nutrition, for example. The climate has changed. Agricultural, how yield has been, I think there was recently some case about tomato where it wasn't available, then we had to get from Burkina Faso. Probably if that's, if there was a data set that has information on that, if it has been updated timely, if it's been updated regularly, for example, it can make it, like people are able to like derive insight from it to be able to know that, okay, maybe this year the yield on tomato won't be very high, or if anyone is building solution in that area. I see a lot of hackathons, mobilities, and all of these things. These are things that people can leverage to gain insight from, right? But then if the data is not even, if it's available, let's establish that it's available, but if there's no way for me to request for it, if there's no way for me to get it in a format that would be useful for me as an engineer or as someone building a solution based on that data, and if it's not even updated, so what's the point of me? That doesn't make it accessible. It's been there, it's there, technically it's available, but it doesn't mean it's accessible because it doesn't serve my purpose. So I think all of these factors into what accessibility means for data, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramat. So on the issue of accessing data, Mr. Kwache, I'm coming to you. If someone wants or needs data from Telecel, how do we go about it? How do we get data from Telecel?
Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. What the person can do is to get in touch with our external affairs team. If you want an email address to be able to send this to, I could provide that. Or if you want a phone number to call, I could provide that. Or if you want to come to the office physically for us to talk, our doors are very well open as well. So then it starts from that point, and then depending on what you're looking for, then we work together on it. There are even times when you could even walk in and say, well, I don't have a specific topic in mind, but I want to know what are some of the ways that we could be of help, because obviously the researcher has the skill set and the tools. In that sense, we could also mention areas to you that, okay, we think this would help, that will help, that will help. And then the researcher can then, based on what we say, take it away and then say, okay, for me to be able to help you, I would need information on ABC, and then we'll work on that. And we do work with various institutions in that manner as well. So it's not only about thinking of a problem and coming to us and say, give me this data set, but you could also come to us and we could have a dialogue, and then we could also say, we have this, would you be able to work with it and then produce this output?
Okay, thank you. Please, I hope you took notes so you can ask Telecel for data for your research. So I'm taking an advice from each person. What practical advice would you give to students, researchers, entrepreneurs, and policy makers who want to drive change in the data space? Just one advice. Maybe Amma can start.
Yeah, hello. Okay, thank you very much for the question. So to my students and researchers, I would say don't wait for perfect data because it doesn't exist. Don't wait for perfect data. Use what you have available. As Ramat said, you don't have to go around now looking for funding to gather new data. Right now, there are a lot of data sets that have been published. People are working around the clock to make sure that there's a lot of locally relevant data for Ghanaians. Okay, so go in for the data sets and be as innovative as possible. But as I said, take note of the use cases. I lumped in the researchers and the students, but for researchers, I would say build communities and gather data ethically whenever you can. That would really be helpful. To the entrepreneurs, I would say build with the community, not just for the community. Always be in touch with the community, engage with them, get to know how their environments are like, get to know how your solution is going to fit into their everyday life, to know that it is actually going to make change so your system doesn't become, or your product doesn't become a white elephant. And to policymakers, I would say, let's treat data as a national infrastructure like we would roads and electricity. Because when the data is made accessible, we, the young ones, can hop on it and do amazing things with it, which would cover ground for Ghana's development. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think my fellow panelists has said everything. Maybe the bit I would like to add will be to the entrepreneurs. So sometimes the thinking is that the contribution that the private sector has to this is more or less limited to providing the commercial data sets so that the value can be unlocked. But if you think of it, it goes beyond that, and at Telecel we recognize this as well, because in addition to providing the data sets, the unlocking of the value will be done by skilled persons. So there is a need to ensure that there is that growing pool of skilled persons to be able to mine this data. So for the entrepreneur, That means giving opportunity to such talent that is being trained. It might mean giving them internships so that they can come and practice on some of the data that can be used, and then go back to school and learn. And this also sometimes involves, when they graduate, looking for ways in which, if there are opportunities available, these will be able to be absorbed as well. And again, at Telecel, we recognize this very much, and we, as much as possible, work with academia to make sure that that training and that skill set is grown, so that we continue to have an expanding pool. Because once the data is there and there are people to mine it, then that collaboration unlocks the value. So that's what I'll add to what my fellow panelists said.
Okay, Ramat, what's your advice?
Okay. I think maybe majorly for students now would probably be, when you want to build a project or we are trying to iterate on a project, maybe look beyond the formal sector. So I'll use formal sector in maybe perhaps ministries, organizations, or places that you know. So a good example I'll give of this is transportation. Perhaps if you're trying to build something around mobility and all of those things, maybe your first thought would be, oh, let me go to like a government ministry or something to get data. But then all about the unions, all of these churches and all of these things, they have unions. So perhaps you could tap into these informal sectors, as I would like to say, to get data from them. I mean, it will cost you in a way, but then you would know that you'll be able to get, maybe not in the format that you want, but that should not limit you. And it might not be enough for whatever you want to do, but at least just look beyond the formal sector. If you need real world data sets for your solutions or for whatever you're building. Thank you.
That's quite interesting and insightful, because we have to work around and get all of that. Dr. Paul.
So thank you for this opportunity. I want to encourage data scientists to spend time on data. In fact, there's a lot of data out there. Take your time. Go to Ghana Statistical Service website. You can find every data, including the color of the eyes of number of people who have green eyes in Ghana. So much data there, which has been hosted on IPUMS, for instance, and that gives you micro data. So how many 8-year-olds have access to internet? You can find it from the census data in Ghana. All this data is there. And all the government agencies, just go to their web, just Google for this data. You find lots and lots of data you cannot even mine. You have a lot of satellite data. Detailed. Today, this night, which areas of Ho had light? Satellite is there. It's all available. Now, I know many Python users are here. I think Beautiful for Soup can make you scrape a lot of data on the net. R is the powerful software that can read a lot of data. All the data she talked about in PDF, all the tables in PDF can be read and converted to CSV for you in R. All the sentences, the statements can be converted to tokenized, and a lot can be done. So R, and so I invite you to join us R tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. We will talk about the powers of R and what R can do. So please, data scientists, take your time, spend time on data. Once data quality is good, your AI system is good. Once data quality is poor, we always say garbage in, garbage out, GIGO. If you put in garbage, you get garbage. So spend time on data, and then go to as all the others have talked about the difficulty to access data, but go to the internet, fish the data yourself, look for the software, get the data, extract it, and you can use it. And if it's not there, go to the places and do your own private research or data collection, and you add it, you put it on a GitHub, for instance, and everybody else can access. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for this insightful session. I think we've all come to realize that Ghana does not have a data problem. We don't even have an accessibility problem. We just didn't know how to get the data and how to use it. So on that note, I'll be taking one question, just one question from the audience. Anyone? If you are doing any research, you need answers.
Okay, thank you. My name is Francis Sam, and my question is to Mr. Dansu. When you were speaking, you made mention that data are sometimes modified to fit their purpose. So my question is, can that modified data be reversed into its original data? And if yes, what prevention do you take to avoid that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. So the short answer to your question is that before we put out anything, we make sure that it does not violate the privacy laws that are available. In which case, if we put the data out and it can be reverse engineered to the original data, then I believe it misses the point. So we make sure, and there are different ways of anonymizing data. One of the ways is that you could completely drop the column. So before it goes out, you won't even know what was there. Or if it has to be there, which is in some rare cases where the column has to be there, what is there is anonymized in such a way that you cannot reverse engineer it to go back to what it was. And then in some cases, you won't even get access to it. So it's not always that the data has to move to the researcher. The researcher can also come to the data in a sandbox environment where now you can do the algorithms, and then once you get how it's supposed to work, it's left there. So the data doesn't even move from that sandbox environment. In that way, we make sure that the consumer's privacy is paramount and is protected.
Yes, please. Thank you very much for the discussion. So I think that the discussions were more tailored on data accessibility. But if I am in my lab and I've done something on probably mosquitoes, how sure am I? So I'm talking about the policy making aspect of the whole discussion. If I have done my data, how sure am I that my research would be implemented in policy, like in policy making? How will my research be included in its use? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Yes, so in policy making, how will my research I have done in my lab, probably published 1 or 2 papers, how can Ghana use that research in their policy making? It's understood? Right, thank you.
Very good question. So this is the reason you publish your results. And particularly in medical sciences, if you publish, the other scientists will come and do a kind of systematic review of all that you have done and get usually a forest plot to find out whether your result is applicable to a good number of people or not. So once the result is published, it will certainly reach the doors of policymakers. But let me add that policymakers look at sometimes the political temperature, especially of their voters. So they can decide to shield what you do and do otherwise. Let me digress a little. When I finished my dissertation, I met a policymaker, and I told him about the direction I think the forest, the Ghana CD dollar policy should take in order to. He told me, look, what you have done is good, but for us, we won't accept it. So, if you are lucky, and in particular, your lecturer gets promoted to, let's say, CEO of a company, then you are sure that the research you have done under him might find the light or by find usefulness in Ghana. But otherwise, publish it, and after 10 years, they'll come and review it and tell whether your research is useful or not.
Thank you so much for accepting our invitation and joining this discussion. I have learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody here has learned something as well. So, sorry to the others who wanted to ask questions. You can see them afterwards and then ask your questions directly. And thank you once again. Okay. Dr. Paul.
Thank you very much, wonderful panelists and our pretty moderator. Thank you. Before we move to the next thing on our agenda, a few announcements. T-shirts are on sale at the first floor. Please, if you want to get a T-shirt, you can buy one. It's not too expensive, 60 cedis. And then please, you've seen the sponsors. Please pass by to interact with our sponsors. You can even get school admission at Ashesi. You can get employed, go and speak to our sponsors. And then tomorrow is a tutorial session and then a workshop day. You should pass by and then pick up your name tags and then move to the breakout rooms. And it's important that you check in every day, so please check in tomorrow and then tomorrow next. Thank you very much. It looks like most of you are tired and sleepy. Maybe you want to dance another kakali. You won't dance? Oh, okay. So we can move right into the next session. It's a lightning talk. It's very, very quick. They have like a small time. If we have Al Maruf Yusuf, Osman Abdul Fattah Idrisu, and then James Tete. So, Lightning Talk is basically selected individuals who have submitted their research abstracts. So we have Al Maruf Yusuf, if you are here. Osman Abdul Fattah Idrisu. And then James Tete Mate. Please, you can. The slides.
No, I mean, I'm giving them to you. I'm packing the chairs.
James, if you are ready, you can come. Please, let's clap for him. It's not easy to be a researcher. Okay. They'll be talking for just 5 minutes. So, James, 5 minutes, strictly 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Oh, let's keep clapping.
All right, good evening. I'm James Tetemate, and then my presentation is about governance-aware privacy, preserving AI infrastructure for Ghana's maternal health ecosystem. And with the panel discussion that just went on, it actually has something to do with my research. You see, most of us are unwilling, or many institutions are unwilling to, give out their data, do you understand, because of how sensitive it is. And I'm even looking at the maternal health ecosystem. They will not share their data with you. So I'm coming in with a solution. Actually, I've researched into it. It is already there. But people with AI infrastructure today are only concerned about prediction. I am looking at it being governance aware. Our system, is it governed by rules? Is it ethical? Do you understand that? So if you look at my background, I'm saying that maternal healthcare system handles sensitive patient data. They are unwilling to share it with you. Okay, so what are we going to do to make sure that we still get the data to train systems and other things? If you look at centralized AI system, risk, privacy leakage, and governance concern, where raw data from the hospitals are going to be, sent into a central server where they are going to be used to train a neural network. In that situation, you can easily leak, okay, because these are raw data. Now, hospitals also often cannot share raw patient data directly. So there is a need for a collaborative healthcare AI system, and that is what my research is talking about. If you look at my objectives, I'm looking at developing a governance-aware, privacy-preserving AI framework where we don't only share raw data, but rather we only share a modified, updated data. Then I'm also using a federated learning for distributed learning, applying differential privacy for privacy protection, and then also some evaluation. All right. More of it will be shared in my poster tomorrow for much more insight. Now, if you look at my methodology, I took the raw data, and then I used the centralized learning first. That is training a neural network with the raw data. Then after that, I brought in the federated learning, where each hospital train or use their raw data in their hospital to train a neural network, and they only pass on the result or the final result to the centralized system for further training. That is the federated learning. And then I also looked at federated learning plus differential privacy, where I added some little noise using Gaussian noise to the final result. Okay, so what I'm trying to do over here is that after training it, maybe hospital A use their raw data to train the neural network. Now the result for prediction, let's say, is 5. Then there is a Gaussian noise where I reduce the 5 by let's say 2 or 3 before it is uploaded, so that even if somebody gets hands on the final result, they are still not going to be able to link it back to the people. So that is what the federated learning, and that is the workflow. So local hospital train models using private data, their own data. Only model parameters are shared with the central server. The server aggregates into global model. Then here we add a noise. Do you understand? And that is the result. If you look at the result, centralized learning using the raw data, the accuracy over here is 68%. That is accuracy for prediction, is 68%. Now, when we brought in federated learning, it even performed better to 70%. And then when we added the noise, that is plus or minus 2 or 1 to change the parameters or the weight a bit, it also performs slightly better with 68. Telling us that yes, we can truly share we can truly share data out there by using federated learning, and then differential privacy by by adding some noises to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, please, let's clap for James. Thank you very much. This is amazing. Do we have Osman Abdul Fattah Idrisu here? Osman? No? 3, 2, 1. Okay. Do we have Al Maruf Yusuf here? Yusuf. 3, 2, 1. Okay, amazing. So we'll move to the closing remarks. We will invite Dano Achu to give us the closing remarks. Can we give it up to him?
Hello. Good evening, good evening. I can see that all of you are tired and you are feeling that you need to get to the house and rest. Well, I want to thank you for coming for day 1 of the Ghana Data Science Summit 2026 here at HTU. We appreciate your time for being with us, and I hope that you have been able to connect with one person or the other. Tomorrow, we will be doing a lot of breakout sessions, and I hope and believe that you are preparing to come register and continue from where we have stopped today. So, as announced, let's get here by 8 o'clock, do our registration here at the auditorium, after which you take your lunch pass, then you go to your breakout room. Please take note of your breakout rooms, and when it is time for lunch, come to the basement for lunch, and then you continue to the breakout rooms, and you close from there. This means that tomorrow we are not having sessions here in the auditorium. So please take note and ensure that you are looking on the conference brochure. I wish you all the best. Get home, rest, and come tomorrow fully energized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. GDSS 2026. Oh, your energy is too low. Too low, too low. Achu will take you to a hotel and then you go and enjoy some. GDS 2026. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow. DJ Kakalika.